Bonjour, je m'appelle Kathy Leadbitter et je suis Research Fellow dans l'équipe de Professeur Jonathan Green depuis l'Université de Manchester en Angleterre. Je suis très contente d'être ici pour parler au sujet de notre recherche. Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation. Je vais parler de facilitateurs et barrières dans l'implémentation et l'utilisation du PACT. Et je suis sûre que vous serez soulagés d'apprendre que je ne vais pas essayer de faire la présentation en français. Donc, je vais parler maintenant en anglais. Today, I'm going to talk about two pieces of research. The first is a qualitative study that we did in the UK as part of the preschool autism communication trial, looking at parent perceptions of the facilitators and barriers of taking part in PACT therapy. The second is a qualitative piece of work by our team and colleagues in India to adapt PACT therapy for delivery by non-specialists within the low resource context of India. So first, to talk about what PACT therapy is. Pediatric Autism Communication Therapy, or PACT, is a relatively low-intensity, parent-led video feedback intervention, improving the social communication skills of children aged 2 to 10 years on the autistic spectrum, with a range of language difficulties. PACT addresses the enduring difficulties with social communication and repetitive behaviours found in young autistic children. It helps parents to interact in different ways to more effectively improve the communication skills of children who have different communication resulting from their autism. PACT identifies the child's individual profile and parents' existing skills, building and extending communication techniques. It encourages and empowers parents to help them feel confident and competent in maximising their support of their child, enabling parents to develop their own skills and ultimately become advocates for their child. PACT therapy sessions last 1 to 2 hours and can take place in a clinic, home or school. The PACT therapist makes a video of the parent and child playing together. The therapist and parent review the video together, and the therapist supports the parent to observe and reflect upon the interaction and to tailor the way they interact to the child's level, style and pace of communication, and to respond with enhanced sensitivity. We call this parent synchrony. Parents are then invited to practice what they are learning at home for about 30 minutes a day. Here are some brief video clips of a PACT therapy in action, just to give you a flavour of what the therapy looks like. So to start with, here is a little video of a parent and child playing together.
Exciting. Stop. Yes. Together. Push. Stop. Nathan, stop. We play Peepo. Peepo. Where's he gone? You found me! You're so clever. Clap hands. No.
And here is a little video clip of the video feedback discussion between the parent and PACT therapist.
One actually. Yes. The one where he understands Nathan push.
Yeah.
And he got quite excited when I stopped it.
Yes, the first time you put the stop in. I think that's right at the very beginning.
And that's something that's really quite interactive because I think he realised I did that and it made the game more fun.
Yeah. Well, let's watch that bit again and see. Yeah, just see what it is. Let's have a think about what made it interactive. What were you doing? What was he doing? What signals was he giving you?
Yeah.
So that you to think,
I need to read.
This means he wants me to be in this bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what he does, because it's always quite familiar. I'll tell you, I'll start it from almost the beginning and play for about a minute.
Pushed again. No, really clever. Clever. Push.
Stop it there for a minute.
He touched me, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. So what he started from when he was first doing it, how together did you feel?
Oh,
to start
really?
with?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're feeling together. He's probably getting that feeling as well.
Yeah.
What is it? What are you doing to give him the feeling that you're with him at that point?
I think it's being on his level as well.
Yeah.
Not being on a chair and being on the floor and trying to get round him so he can see me.
Yeah. 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 You've got your head right round, haven't you? It's not hidden right behind him, and you're kind of almost enclosed, aren't you?
Yeah.
So he's getting the message. And what message is he getting from that?
Let's do it together.
Yeah.
Let's do it together.
Let's do it together. That you're there, you're available
Yeah.
to do this with. Yeah. So he's getting that lovely message just from something as simple as your positioning and where you are.
Okay, hopefully that's brought the therapy to life a little bit for you. I'm not going to talk too much about the evidence of effectiveness for PACT because my talk today is mainly focused on implementation, but I will give a brief summary. The research is published in these journal articles. The top two are published in The Lancet and the bottom one in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders. The context was a randomised controlled trial with 152 participants. 75 randomly allocated to treatment as usual, and 77 randomly allocated to PACT. Participants were followed up at 13 months and then again at 82 months, with measurement of outcomes including parent synchrony, child communication, autism symptoms, and child language. From this large randomised controlled trial, we found evidence for enhanced parent synchrony at 13-month follow-up, increased child initiations at 13 and 82-month follow-up, reduced autism symptomatology at 13 and 82-month follow-up, and improved aspects of family experience and quality of life at 13 and 80-month follow-up too. So we know from the results of the randomised controlled trial that PACT is effective on specific parent and child outcomes. We had anecdotal evidence that, generally speaking, parents like the therapy, but we didn't yet have systematic evidence of the specifics of parental perceptions of participation in the therapy and the barriers and facilitators to their participation. Also, their perceptions of any effects or benefits and any costs of taking part in the intervention, and more specifically, the acceptability and sustainability, factors that are critical if an intervention is to be implemented as part of standard care. We decided to carry out a qualitative study to find out more about these things. We recruited participants who had taken part in PACT as part of the trial. Participants were 18 parents, 6 families in which 2 parents gave feedback, and 6 families in which 1 parent gave feedback. All participants had a child aged 2 to 5 years with a diagnosis of autism. Participants were from a range of demographic backgrounds, including diverse ethnic backgrounds, educational levels, and family income. The sample also varied in terms of the number of PACT sessions the parents had attended, and also in their levels of therapeutic alliance, the extent to which they valued their relationship with the therapist and valued the intervention itself. Detailed semi-structured interviews were carried out by an independent researcher who had some knowledge and understanding of PACT, but who wasn't part of the research or therapy team. Interviews were transcribed verbatim. Data analysis was conducted with thematic analysis using a constant comparison method. The first main theme arising out of this qualitative study concerned the emotional backdrop against which the intervention commenced. Children were often referred to PACT soon after their autism diagnosis. It was clear from the narratives that when entering the intervention programme, parents were in very varied emotional places and at diverse points in terms of adaptation to the diagnosis. Parental hopes and expectations about what the intervention would achieve also varied considerably. Some parents expressed gratitude for any input at all. Others hoped that taking part in the therapy would help them understand more clearly their child's needs and learn strategies to promote their child's development. One commonly held hope was that their child would quickly start to speak. And that's demonstrated in the quote on the slide. I was thinking it was like, oh, they're going to give me some miracle potion or something and show me how to do things, and they're going to teach him how to talk straight away. These initial hopes and expectations impacted on parents' perceptions of the therapy and to some extent their evaluations of the therapy's success. I will go on to talk more about this later. A second theme concerned initial adjustment to the therapy. All parents ultimately found the opportunity to reflect on the way they played and interacted with their child rewarding, but it sometimes took time to get to this point. Some parents reported that at first they were uncomfortable with the therapy aims because they felt that they should be directing and teaching their child to engage in educational activities. There's a nice example in the first quote on the slide. The first video, when she said, "Just play, show me how you play with him." I thought I was right. I thought mum should tell child what to do and he should obey. That's what I saw mums doing because they're teaching children. But she, the therapist, said it's not right. So I was not agreeing first time. However, the process of therapy changed their ideas about how to play with their child. For some parents, analysis of the video could be challenging in the early stages of the intervention. One mother said she felt under the spotlight. Another parent said, "It was like you was being analysed. Everything you'd just done was like she was like ripping it all to bits and putting it in little, and I didn't like that, but it was good in the end. It was only like when you'd been into it a few weeks that you understood why." However, as time went on, parents became accustomed to the process and in all cases came to value this part of the intervention. Some parents wanted rapid change in their child and found it very difficult at first to be patient and take things more slowly, even when they recognised that this was a helpful thing to do. One mother struggled to see any benefits and felt impatient and frustrated that it wasn't going to be a quick-term fix. However, over time, her view changed and she began to understand the point of what she was doing. Participants reflected on the benefits and challenges of engagement with the therapeutic process. One strong theme that came through concerned the relationship with the therapist and the validation they gained from this relationship. Parents developed close working relationships with therapists. All interviewees expressed holding their therapist in high esteem. Therapists were described as patient, empathic, and positive. Their ability to understand the challenges faced by parents and to do so without judgment was valued. A number of parents spoke directly about or alluded to the regular judgment and criticism they felt in social situations with their child. Receiving recognition and praise from the therapist was a source of validation for them and an important part of the intervention. For some, this was their only experience of being seen and acknowledged as a good enough parent. There's a quote at the top of the slide that gives an example of this. The speech therapist, she was lovely. She was absolutely fantastic. She was really understanding. And when we had problems, she was understanding and sympathetic. But it was difficult, and she saw how difficult it was. As discussed, it sometimes took time for parents to adjust to the video feedback aspect of the therapy. Parents also discussed benefits to the video feedback process. Parents felt that the video feedback allowed them to see things in their interactions with their child which were surprising and revelatory, and also enabled them to see the progress they were making over the course of the therapy in a tangible way. The second quote demonstrates this. You can't think of everything, and you don't see all the little things that go right or wrong or anything. So it is so very, very good to watch yourself back on it. Watching the videos allowed parents to begin to see and read the less clear communicative signals their child was sending, making them more attuned and responsive to their child's needs. The therapist often highlighted interactional phenomena of which parents were unaware, and which helped them recognise positive aspects of their interaction with their child. Parents reflected for themselves on the process of learning a different interactional style, as demonstrated from the bottom quote. You're learning so much to be on his level and letting him, do what he wants to do and follow it, sort of thing. And it was a really big learning curve. It was very good. The practicalities of attending PACT sessions and carrying out the daily home practice created challenges for some parents. The time commitment required by the therapy, an average of 4 hours per week, could be challenging for some parents, particularly for those in employment. They could see the advantages the intervention conferred on them and their child, but there were times when it was difficult to find the time to attend sessions and do home practice. Some children, particularly those who were anxious or active, struggled with the length of the sessions, and this caused stress for their parents. PACT sessions within the trial were mostly delivered within a clinic setting, which may have been a distance from families' homes and an unfamiliar setting for the child. For many parents, the travel was burdensome and sometimes tiring for the child, making engaging in the activities of PACT much more difficult. For one parent interviewed, it became too difficult to continue, and she had to withdraw from the therapy. Another could only continue when sessions were moved to the home, as shown in this first quote on the slide. He didn't like the small therapy room. He started screaming and not wanting to go in. He just wouldn't go into the room or even the building at one point. So it had to be at home. It worked better at home. During therapy sessions, the therapist and parent needed time and space to engage in reflection and discussion. It was sometimes difficult to occupy the child during this time. Sometimes the child was engaged in a preferred activity during therapist-parent feedback or occupied by another family member. However, for others, this was not possible, and consequently, some parents struggled to devote their attention to the feedback. They would have welcomed someone who could play with and distract their child. The bottom quote on the slide gives an example of this. The only thing I found really hard, I had to try and watch the video and talk to the therapist, and I found it so hard, and I think he did, because he mithered and pestered me to death. Mummy, 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 mummy. And I was torn between the two, trying to concentrate, and him. The final overarching theme focused on parents' perceptions of the impact of the therapy on themselves, their child, and their family. A thread running through the narratives was a process of learning for parents that resulted in a new and deeper understanding of their child's interests, capabilities, and communication, and their adoption of a more sensitive and responsive interactional style. As you can see from the first quote on the slide. It was a revelation to me. I thought I was the only person who knew my child, and I didn't. Now I know him best, but I didn't at the start of PACT. The effects of PACT on the wider family were evident in a number of accounts. For many, the progress made during the intervention allowed members of the wider family to see the child more positively, rather than just seeing the autism. The effects of PACT on parental confidence and self-efficacy also sometimes extended out to the whole family. PACT was hugely important for the whole family. It is kind of a family confidence it gave the whole family, really. Parents described how the work with the therapist had helped them to realise that they possessed great knowledge and ability to help their child, and that by the end of the therapy, they had a new and deeper understanding of their child. Many parents reported being won over by the strengthening of their relationship with their child. This mother describes the impact on her in the most concise and moving way of all. I have always loved my son, but I fell in love with him after PACT. Another important theme concerns ongoing struggles faced by parents. As described earlier, many parents long for spoken language as an outcome of the intervention. Some parents reported that PACT helped their child to talk, and this was an achievement that was understandably valued. However, others reported that their child had not started to use spoken language, and this was difficult to come to terms with. For some parents, the therapy had entailed a painful coming to terms with the extent of their child's disability. One parent described that although her child had made progress with PACT, she and her husband were still grieving for the loss of the child we thought we were going to have. And her hope that her child would have talked had not been realised. This mother valued the intervention, but it had brought home for her the consequences of her child's disability and the possibility that he might never learn to speak. A second mother described that despite her best attempts in engaging with the therapy, the pace of her child's development was slower than she had hoped. And this brought home for her the severity of her child's autism, and this had understandably been very difficult. So to conclude this part of the talk, this qualitative study provided insights into parents' perceptions of intervention outcomes, their learning journey and process of change, the value of their relationship with the therapist, and poignant emotional challenges and practical difficulties associated with participation in a parent-mediated early intervention. These insights had not been clearly documented through our quantitative work. It was clear that PACT brings real and sometimes profound benefits to parents and to their relationship with their child. Therapists delivering PACT can expect some initial discomfort with the therapy, style and video feedback technique, but can be confident that most parents will come to value the therapy and embrace the approach. One important finding from this study is that careful attention must be paid to the practicalities. For example, where the therapy takes place and how children are occupied during video feedback. If the practicalities aren't right, this can lead to families not proceeding with the intervention. In a more recent trial by the PACT Consortium called PACT-G, we are testing a next generation version of PACT, which is delivered at home and school. This paper should be out in publication in coming months. Another important finding is that some parents need more targeted support with their adjustment and resolution to the diagnosis before they are in the right emotional place to embark on this parent-mediated therapy. Our group are currently running a trial called Reach ASD, which tests a post-diagnostic programme for parents, which blends autism psychoeducation with acceptance and commitment therapy to support parental adjustment and empowerment. We hope to publish the results of this trial in a couple of years. If it proves to be effective, this would be an important component on a care pathway, which could involve this post-diagnostic programme prior to the delivery of PACT. I'm now going to come on to talk about a second project led by our group alongside collaborators in India, which has served to adapt PACT therapy for the low-resource context of India. This work has been led by an organisation called Sangath, which is a public health research not-for-profit based in Goa and New Delhi, and has been a collaboration with other organisations, as shown by the logos here. The barriers to families of autistic children accessing care in India are significant. India has a huge population. It's estimated that there are around 2 million autistic children aged 2 to 9 years in India alone. Most children have no access to evidence-based care. There is a paucity of skilled personnel, such as speech and language therapists, clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, and paediatricians. The services that are to be found are based within specialist urban centres and are therefore inaccessible to the vast majority of the population. In 2012, Gary Devan, a developmental paediatrician who is one of the leads of Sangath, and her colleagues from within Sangath, recognised the need for evidence-based interventions that could potentially be delivered by non-specialists so as to be scalable within India. They identified PACT as being a contender for this purpose. They were attracted to the fact that it had an emergent evidence base, was manualised, was parent-mediated, and relatively low intensity, and that it was based on developmental principles. Gary and her colleagues approached our team in Manchester to work together on adapting PACT to be delivered by non-specialists in India. They carried out detailed qualitative work to understand the context and the key dimensions for adaptation. This work was published in the paper shown here on the slide, published in Global Health Action. The first iteration of adapted PACT was known as PASS. This was tested in the PASS pilot study funded by Autism Speaks and took place in Goa, India, and Rawalpindi in Pakistan. This was published in 2016 in the Lancet Psychiatry. The second iteration was called PASS Plus, and this was tested in a pilot study of the same name. PASS Plus was funded by Grand Challenges Canada and took place in the western state of Maharashtra in India. This was published in 2018 in Autism Research. This programme of work identified several barriers to implementation of PACT in India, and the team has worked hard to overcome those barriers. The first barrier to be addressed was the lack of specialists to deliver the intervention and the need for task shifting. The intervention manual was carefully adapted for non-specialist delivery through a series of workshops. A training and supervision cascade was developed, as shown here, whereby more specialist individuals train and supervise those who are less specialist. Developmental specialists train and supervise intervention coordinators, who in turn train and supervise non-specialist workers, who in turn deliver the therapy to parents of autistic children living within their community. The main non-specialist worker with whom we are currently working is the ASHA, or Accredited Social Health Activist. These are community health workers delivering support to families living in the Delhi region. Another important part of this process was to simplify the manual to make it more accessible to non-specialists who did not have a background in child development, speech and language therapy, psychology, or autism. This included simplifying the technical language and providing explicit teaching around autism and communication development, as well as further explanation of some of the concepts. For example, what sharing enjoyment means and looks like. Importantly, the use of non-specialist workers was acceptable to the parents receiving the intervention, as shown by this quote here on the slide. "I don't have much opinion about education, but if he has knowledge in this, then that is enough. It is not that all those who are educated only are intelligent. Some are intelligent on the basis of their talent also." Some of the identified barriers were very similar to those found in the UK context. For example, it took time for parents to get used to the video feedback element and to the facilitative style. However, there were additional barriers that were specific to the local context. The concept of parents playing with their children was culturally unfamiliar to some parents, and there could therefore be potential unease with this kind of approach. This is demonstrated by the quote here. "Children mostly play with their friends. Usually in our village, parents don't play with their children." Included in the adapted manual was therefore explicit discussion about this being a play-based intervention and the reason this approach is taken over a directive teaching approach. The availability of toys was another potential barrier to accessing the therapy. a box of toys is taken by facilitators to the intervention sessions with locally familiar household objects and toys. An exploration of common games played and toys used was part of the qualitative work. Parents, including rural parents, describe casual play with accessible materials such as sticks, leaves, water play, and household items. And all these things can be used for between session home practice in PASS and PASS Plus. During the adaptation process, experts suggested analogies should be culturally and locally appropriate. For example, in the PACT manual, the concept of mapping words is described by an analogy of thinking of post-its on every object. However, a parent provided an analogy of each object having its own microphone, which shouts out its name. Similarly, the concept of demands being made on the child was simplified to pressure, which one specialist adapted into a culturally specific analogy as shown here. Suppose you were cooking a meal and your mother-in-law is watching you and giving you continuous instructions. How would you feel? Compare it to her letting you cook without bothering you. When would you be more relaxed? During the initial pilot trial, the need was identified to expand the intervention by incorporating additional modules to address comorbidities such as sleep problems, behaviour problems, and sensory issues that autistic children often experience to create a more holistic intervention package. The presence of comorbidities often preoccupied parents and on occasion interfered with their ability to engage with the home programme for core social communication symptoms, which were targeted in the PASS intervention. To address the identified need, the team systematically developed a series of therapeutic modules for the most common comorbidities, which could be integrated efficiently into the core PASS social communication intervention. This holistic intervention package is what is known as PASS Plus. Here are some brief video clips of ASHA workers, the local community health workers, delivering PASS Plus to families within Delhi. Hopefully this will give you a little bit of a flavour. I haven't included the sound because the sound quality is not very good and also people are speaking in Hindi, so I felt that might not be that helpful. So you can see here that the therapy sessions often take place on a bed because this is sometimes the place in which there's most room for the interaction and play to happen. So you can see here the bag of toys that the PASS Plus facilitator has brought. And you can also see that smartphones are used to record the parent-child play and to share the video feedback with the parent. And you can also see that the children are also sometimes quite interested in the video feedback too. Okay, I'll stop that there. Hopefully that brings it to life a little bit for you. So in conclusion, our colleagues in Sangath have conducted an iterative process of adaptation, and this has been a relatively successful one. Some of the barriers identified are very similar to those found in the UK context and in other contexts in which PACT has been adapted and implemented. Context-specific barriers were identified, and some of these were overcome through the adaptation process. We are currently carrying out a large randomised controlled trial of the clinical and cost effectiveness of PASS Plus as delivered by ASHA workers in New Delhi. This involves 250 children referred from tertiary hospitals, each followed up over 15 months. We await the results, which should be published within 2 to 3 years, all being well. To conclude, I would like to acknowledge the large teams of people who make this research possible. I'd like to thank the organisations who fund our research, and of course the parents, children and professionals who generously offer their time and insights to make this research possible. My email address is shown here on the bottom of the slide in case you have any further questions or comments or things you would like to discuss. I would like to thank you ever so much for listening to the talk, and I'd be very happy to join you in person to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.